Hello, everyone, and welcome to the June Team Studio TLCC webinar. Thank you for joining us today, and as we welcome our guest speaker, Mark Roden, who will be presenting jQuery Comes to XPages. My name is...
I think we might have lost Kyle. Are you there?
Still here. I think Ben may have.
Oh, that was Ben. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think he lost the connection.
Okay, because it shows you.
Okay. And so my name is Ben Green, and I'm joined today by Howard Greenberg of TLCC. Howard, I'll let you say hello again.
Hello, everybody, and welcome.
Great. And of course, we also have Mark Roden, our presenter.
Hey, Ben. Thanks, everybody, for coming today. Looking forward to it.
Great. And so on the agenda today, we will be taking a few moments to tell you. I'll be taking a few moments to tell you about Team Studio, who we are and what we do. I'll then be passing the controls to Howard at TLCC, so he can do the same, and then we'll get to Mark and let him dive right in. If you like what you are hearing today during the call, please share it with others, and you'll see on the presentation slide all of our Twitter handles, so we encourage you to mention us. Before we do get started, just a few administrative things to cover. To protect your privacy during this conference, the attendee list is not public, so you only see yourself and the panelists listed in the WebEx attendee window. You all are all muted during this session, so your participation will be through the chat window and the Q&A panel. And we are doing Q&A at the end of the session, but you're welcome to ask your questions at any point during the session, and we'll get to them once the formal presentation has concluded. This session is being recorded, and the link will also be sent out to you in a follow-up email, so you can share it with folks as well. So just a little bit about Team Studio. I want to give you a brief introduction and possibly a refresher for a lot of you all on Team Studio. So we've assisted many of you in the past with application development. We've been delivering innovative developer tools and productivity tools for the Lotus Notes and Domino community since 1996. We've been specializing in things like source code control, version management, and source code management. And we've moved into the mobile space with an application called Unplugged just in 2010. And Unplugged gives you the ability to extend your Notes applications out to mobile devices. So that's also something you all can check out if you haven't done so already. Just a little bit more about Unplugged. So it's basically a mobile Domino server that takes your notes, allows you to take your notes apps with you. The unique thing about it is that it leverages the technology of XPages and provides a native app experience for the user. And we're very proud to have been the recipient of the IBM Collaboration Solution Award at IBM Connect this year in Orlando. And this product is now available on all the major mobile platforms, including BlackBerry, Android, and iOS. One other product that we've come out with just recently allows clients to create custom mobile applications to their own specs, and we've recently produced an application which is a hosted solution, and it's a production-ready application for business continuity. So any of you all that have business continuity plans or crisis communications plans, the application that we've created will allow you to access those plans on smartphones and tablets, once again for iOS, Android, and BlackBerry. And it gives you also offline access to all of your continuity and disaster recovery data, in addition to plans, your contacts, and also call trees. And you can download it from Google and also from the App Store right now for free to try Team Studio Continuity out. Last but not least, until the end of this month, we have 30% off special for all Team Studio tools, and also 15% off special for all Whitetria tools. And if you're going to be in the Japan or Tokyo area, please visit us at SoftBank World, July 23rd and 24th in Tokyo. Our next webinar for Team Studio in general is going to be on the 27th, and it's going to be Dojo grids in XPages. And with that, I want to thank you once again for joining us, and I'd like to pass the presentation on to Howard so he can talk a little bit about TLCC. Howard.
Yes, thank you, Ben. Let me just share my screen here. I think you need to make me, there we go, okay.
Great. And I am passing it to you right now, Howard. There you go.
Yes, let me know if you see my screen. I think it's just coming up.
Yep, working.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so my name is Howard Greenberg with TLCC. One of the partners, along with Paul Delanebbia, who couldn't make it tonight, or I should say this morning, depending on where you're calling in from. We have, as Ben mentioned, our next webinar is, if you've been following the blogging world, you might have read some blogs by Brad Balasadis, who's been talking a lot about Dojo data grids. I think he's up to number 21 in his series. So he's going to pull those together and do a webinar for us next week. That's going to be on the 27th, and you can go to that link on the screen to get the information about that and to register. We also have information about our July webinar as well, which will be on mobile development with XPages and a new set of controls on OpenNTF that actually is done in conjunction with Team Studio and Mark White and some other people as an alternative to the mobile controls that are come in the extension library. And also at that same link on this slide, all of the past webinars are there available on YouTube, and most of those also have the slides available for download. So if you're just getting started with our webinar, our series, and with XPages, there's a lot of great education out there that you can use. A little bit about TLCC. We have been doing Notes and Domino training since 1987. Primarily, all our courses are self-paced. So they come where you can download them to your Notes client and take them and go through the lessons in the Notes client, and then go to the Domino Designer or your Domino Administrator client and try things out. We got into XPages pretty much right from the beginning, and now have 7 XPages courses. The first one on the list is a great deal. It's free, and if you're just getting started in XPages, this is a great, 3-hour introduction to XPages and how they work, and will get you going with a simple app. And then we also have a course on JavaScript. As you'll probably see today in Marty's presentation, JavaScript is a key core programming language of XPages, and there's a lot you can do with it. So it's highly recommended as a prerequisite before you get started with your XPages learning. And then we have some XPages courses. The first course is developing XPages using Domino Designer. For version 9, we call that XPages Development 1. And you see that a number of our courses are available in both an 8.5 and a 9 version. So as I mentioned, all our courses are self-paced. You can learn wherever you are. I know a lot of our attendees today are in a completely different time zone than we are. So this works out well. We've actually done a lot of training with customers in New Zealand, in Australia, and other parts of the Asia Pacific area, because the courses are self-paced, so people just take them whenever they get time. We also can do instructor-led courses, either on-site, or we can do those over the web, similar to what we're doing today, but more of a one-on-one interactive session. And we also do mentoring services as well. Okay, so a little bit about the webinar today. As Ben mentioned, there, at the end, we're going to hold our questions until the end, but you'll notice that there is a Q&A button in the top of your screen in the WebEx interface. And you can use that Q&A button to ask a question. And I encourage you to ask questions as we go along. We're not going to answer them until the end, and then I'll go through and moderate the questions and ask them to Mark, who will answer them verbally. So all your asking questions should be done in the Q&A panel. If you have a technical issue with the webinar, you're welcome to use the chat too, but we won't be answering questions at the end based on the chat questions. We prefer to use the Q&A panel. So just a little what I'm trying to say, lost the train of thought there, but just how the webinar is going to work. So the presenter today is Dr. Marky Roden, and yes, he is a doctor, not a medical doctor, but he's a PhD in chemistry, and made the career change into IT and has been doing Notes and Domino work for quite a few years. And he also got into XPages at the beginning and has been diving a lot into using jQuery. If you go to his blog, you'll, again, like the other blogger I mentioned, he's been concentrating more on the jQuery side. So there is a lot of good background there as well. And I saw this presentation that Marky's going to do back at Connect, that's the conference formerly known as Lotusphere, back in January, and thought this would be a great presentation to bring to everyone, which we did back in April for the North American time. And so this is kind of a repeat for the folks in Asia Pacific. So Marky, why don't you take it away? I'll make you a presenter. Let's see.
Thank you, Howard.
Oh, okay, there we go. You should be.
There we go. Okay. And maybe. Maybe.
It's thinking.
It is thinking. Can you see me now? There we go. You should be able to see me now.
Yep, we see your
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. And today I am going to talk about jQuery. And I'm going to specifically talk about how we use jQuery in XPages. But because it is a JavaScript library, we can use it in old Domino, and in fact you can use it in any server technology because it is purely a browser client-side JavaScript library. It's a little bit about me. I've been doing IBM Notes for 15 years now. I work for the PSC group based in Chicago. And you can see on here my contact information. Best way to get hold of me is probably via Twitter @MarkyRoden. And so this is what we're going to talk about today. What is jQuery? What is it? What can it do? For those people that have been using XPages, we know that Dojo is included in our XPages by default. And it has a lot of similarities to jQuery, so why should we use jQuery instead of Dojo? Then we're going to look at how jQuery works, which is really very simple. And we're going to see how we add it to our XPages. And we're going to talk about some plugins, do some demonstrations, and talk about how using jQuery can really make your websites pop and can help you meet requirements that your customers have that either you know about already or is going to happen. So what is jQuery? It's a JavaScript library. the original concept it was made about 7 years ago by a guy called John Resick, and the original concept grew out of a problem that he had developing for multiple browsers. We think we have a problem nowadays. Back in 2006, it was way worse. The diversity of coverage and lack of standards by each of the browsers basically meant that you were developing an application 3 times for 3 different browsers. They were that different. So what he did was he came up with the idea of, well, if I can manage each different way that a browser does one particular thing, and I can put it into a function, and I can always call that function, then all I need to do is call that function to do something, and I don't need to worry about the browser incompatibility anymore. And it grew out of that, like a number of other libraries at the time. jQuery is now used almost everywhere. 2/3 of the world's top 10,000 websites. Nearly 60% of the top 1,000,000 websites use jQuery. It is that popular. Microsoft have adopted part of it as part of their .NET 4 framework. And there are many, many websites, as I mentioned, that use it. In fact, probably ones that you already know very well, but don't even realize that they're using jQuery. When you go to a web page and you see a picture slideshow, or you see animation moving around the page, good chances it's been done with jQuery. So, jQuery comes in 3 different types, I guess you want to say. There is the core, which allows for document model manipulation, simple animations, other manipulations that we will see and we will come to talk about during this presentation. There is a UI package which has some pre-packaged functional things like date pickers, sliders, accordions. It's very analogous to the widgets that come out of the Dojo packet. So it's not necessarily just a core, do something. It's more of a encapsulated little capability almost. And then there's jQuery Mobile, which I'd love to talk about. I could talk about it all day, in fact. But what that does is it provides a standard interface. It does a lot of the same things in that it removes the need to code for different mobile platforms, whether it's Windows, whether it's iOS, whether it's Android, and allows a lot of the jQuery functionality to be able to be ported to a mobile device. But unfortunately, we're not going to talk about that today. So what about Dojo? When should I use jQuery? So Dojo is a JavaScript library, just like jQuery is, with a lot of the same premises in that it helps to remove browser inconsistencies, lack of support of standards. jQuery does actually support more browsers than Dojo does, although the extreme end of browsers that jQuery does support, you are highly unlikely to come across in your work for corporations and or as a consultant, but you never know. And Dojo, in its core, does a very similar thing to jQuery. It allows you to do basic manipulation of the document model, and by that I mean your HTML page. So it allows you to make things red. It allows you to select a table and hide it, or show it, or move it around. I already mentioned, analogous to jQuery UI, we have the Dojo widgets, date pickers, and what have you. Now these we do get out of the box in XPages. When you pick a text field and you make it a date type and you get a date picker in your XPage, it's actually using a Dojo widget. So out of the box, you're already using Dojo. So if all you want is a date picker, well, there's not much point in using the jQuery one because you already have one. But there are many differences. Dojo itself is designed as a framework library to build JavaScript applications, whereas jQuery is designed to make coding as simple as possible and do more with less. So what do I kind of mean by that? Well, IBM used Dojo to build the XPages framework as a web-based capability. So the ability to do date pickers, to do partial refreshers, and all of the functionality that we get out of a web page out of the box with XPage is part of from a Dojo framework. But you or I aren't building JavaScript frameworks. We're building discrete applications for customers. So we wouldn't build an entire Dojo framework to meet a requirement. We would use our XPages application, and we would use specific features of Dojo or jQuery to meet specific requirements. And as we'll see, jQuery is very easy to use, and in fact, I think the syntax is actually easier than Dojo's. But that said, there are many factors that come into deciding whether or not you should use Dojo or jQuery. For a start, if you add jQuery, it's another library. You can turn Dojo off, but if you turn Dojo off in your XPages, you're basically removing all of the functionality and all of the cool and the neat stuff that you get by using Dojo in XPages. So if you're going to turn Dojo off, you pretty much have to have a very good reason. So you're going to be adding another library. If you have a slow network or a slow connectivity, or you have mobile users on a poor connection, that becomes a consideration because your page is going to be bigger. There are certain functional requirements, however, that may be met using jQuery better than Dojo, or vice versa. Certainly within the team that you work in, you've got to have a developmental experience. Has to come into it. If you've got 10 people in the team and 9 of them do Dojo and 1 do jQuery, that makes it a very difficult application to then maintain if you only have 1 person that can do it. Project timeline obviously comes into everything that we do. If we want to learn jQuery on the fly, then maybe we can't do it within this particular timeline or something like that. Just something also to consider that jQuery version 2 does not support IE less than 9. And I'm sad to say when we were at Connect this year, I actually asked people to put up their hands if they were still supporting IE6 or IE7, and there was a significant number of people in the room. Corporations still use old versions of IE. That doesn't mean that you can't use jQuery 1.9, and jQuery 1.9 will actually be supported for years to come. But be aware, if you want to use a plugin that we'll talk about later that uses version 2 only, that's another consideration. So, don't use jQuery. And I'm never going to say this again after this particular slide, but don't use jQuery if there isn't a good reason to use it. And if you only want to do basic manipulation of the document model, do it in Dojo. If you want to hide or show a section using client-side JavaScript, use Dojo. Don't use jQuery. There's no need to add the overhead to the application. jQuery is 94K, although in the later versions you can remove parts of it that are not used. And this is an interesting distinction in the way that Dojo and jQuery developers have created this. The jQuery development team have put all of the functionality into one library to make it easier for the developer to be able to do what they want. Whereas the Dojo development team specifically minimized the size of the core Dojo, and actually in the later versions of Dojo, they now use what's called asynchronous module definition, something like that anyway, that basically allows you to download each small part as you need it, which makes the application more efficient, but makes your job as a programmer harder. Do not use jQuery if you are using One UI? Well, I say that. One UI is the out-of-the-box look and feel that we get and we're encouraged to use for XPage development. And it does make a very nice, clean interface. However, the ability to create that very nice, clean interface is controlled very strictly by the style sheets, who are extremely insistent that you will do things the One UI way. And if you start to put some jQuery plugins onto your One UI look and feel, you may start to think that they don't work. And it's really a styling issue. One UI is extremely insistent. And that doesn't mean it can't be corrected, but it does mean that it's going to take some more work to understand why the CSS is not working, and for you to be able to manipulate the plugin potentially and make it work in a way that you need it to. So I'm not saying don't, I'm just saying be wary. And don't use jQuery if you just don't want to learn Dojo. Dojo comes with XPages. You need to learn Dojo so that you can make an educated decision that you shouldn't use it. And that doesn't, I know that doesn't sound like it makes sense, but you need to learn the basics of Dojo because that's what you get. And you need to be able to create a reasoned argument as to why you should choose one or the other. So, with all that aside, when should you use jQuery? Well, you should use jQuery all the rest of the times. I don't know. So what we're going to look at today is that when you need specific functionality that jQuery or a jQuery plugin provides for you, and you can actually meet your requirement very quickly, then that makes a lot of sense to use it. With all of the other caveats aside, there are very justifiable reasons why it makes your application better and makes you able to deliver quicker and cheaper ultimately. The business plan has to support jQuery usage. One of the questions we got in the last webinar was, how do you handle different versions of jQuery across the enterprise? Because you've got one plugin that might need one version, another plugin that might need another version. And frankly, there's no good answer. There's no wrong answer. There's no right answer. Some people like to put all of their different jQuery packages on the server, and then each individual application will then use each plugin as necessary. What I will say is that, like everything, jQuery strives to be backwards compatible. But just in the same way that IBM strives to do that, at times stuff breaks. With all the best intention in the world, they don't always get it right. So if you need a specific version of jQuery for a specific plugin, then I wholeheartedly recommend that you do that and don't risk using a later version unless you are ready to and prepared to put in the testing and the plugin community. And this is really what we're all here to see today anyway. So how does jQuery work? So what I've put up on the screen here is, and I'm not going to go through each one of these individually, is this is a list of just some sample references. There are many more than these. And what I'm trying to illustrate here is that everything is relatively easy to read. So if I want to get the attribute of an element, I would use atta, the height. If I want to create a blur, or if I want to cycle through each thing in an array, get the width. These are easy to read, very simple functions, and as we will come to see, you can use them one after another. So it's a two-step process, basically. We use a specific format to select something on the page that we want to do something to. And there are a number of different selectors, and you can select by CSS class, you can select by ID, you can select by the ID contains something, you can select if, you can select by element name, so give me every table, give me every div. And so in all JavaScript, if you wanted to get every table, there is a JavaScript command, and it's document.get element by tag name, or by tag name, and table. It gives you all the tables. But if you want to do selectors by class name, for example, modern browsers support that, but older ones do not. And there are different ways and means of doing it. But once you've selected your particular element or elements on the document model, you then do something to it. And in this case, I would say everything that has a class of my class, the dot notification, just like in CSS, shows you that as a class. And then I am going to give it a style sheet display none, which makes it disappear. Simple as that. Now, this is where jQuery, to me, excels and separates itself from Dojo. It's chaining. You can do chaining in Dojo. Some of the Dojo modules have chaining built in. Some of them do not. And it is syntactically difficult and interesting to make Dojo chaining work with everything in Dojo. In jQuery, anything and everything is chainable. So in this particular example, I am going to select everything that has every paragraph tag. And within every paragraph tag, I'm going to find a word that contains the letter T, and I'm going to turn it red. And this is one line of code. So this is this dot that dot that. And if I wanted to change multiple things about these paragraphs, I could just do dot this, dot that, dot this, dot that, and using this kind of notation suddenly starts to open up all sorts of possibilities for you to be able to write very powerful pieces of code very quickly and very simply. Within the chaining, it always retains a link back to the original DOM elements that were selected. Meaning you get lower memory usage and it's quicker. You get short pieces of code. Again, it looks very simple, and more importantly, allows for plugin creation, and that's what we will come to in a few minutes. So let's take a brief moment and see how do I actually add jQuery to my web pages. And in the slides that will be published with this, you can see some of the steps I use, and I'm going to do a little demonstration in a minute. So, just to review, jQuery is a client-side JavaScript library. And we can add that in old Domino. We can add that to our files, the database files. We could add it in there. It could be referenced on the server. It could be referenced on an external website. But when we start to talk about plugins, the plugins don't just come with a piece of JavaScript. They come with CSS. They come with images. They come with other pieces of JavaScript. And in some cases, a lot of them. And to actually individually manage each one of these as a file or an image or a library makes life extremely difficult. And it did before we had XPages. So I'm going to show you. So what we'll do is I'll just drag in my virtual machine here. So the first thing you would do is you would go to jQuery.com, and from there you would go to the download link, and depending on what you want to do, you can download 1.9. You can actually, through here, you can actually go back and download any version specifically of jQuery that you want. We've got jQuery 2, and there are actually migration plugins that will actually help you upgrade as you go along if you so wanted to. But once you've actually downloaded the file to your hard drive, I would suggest that you stick it in a folder called JS. And in this case, it's the JS folder on my desktop. And then within Windows Explorer, within Windows Explorer. Within Domino Designer, you would normally come to it and it would normally look like this. Within 8.5.3 and within version 9, you can open the XPages perspective, and what you get over here is called the Package Explorer. Or if you're in 8.5.2 and below, you can actually look at the Eclipse views, and if you go under Other and you look in the Java section, you will find the Package Explorer in there as well. Within the Package Explorer, this is the Java view of your database. XPages is a Java application. And not only do we have references to the Java files in here, you can see the forms, the views, the pages, and what have you. But we also have this web content area. And the beauty of this web content area is that it references everything in that folder as if it was at the root of the application in the NSF file. So for those of you that have done web development, we've got blah blah blah.com / the path / your database.nsf / and then everything after that / is actually referenced in this web contents folder. So if I go to my database.nsf / ni9-logo.png, it will be displayed on the screen. And as we come to see with the plugins, all the plugins come in already in the existing folder structure. So let's do this first. So within my JavaScript folder, JS folder, I have jQuery 1.9, and let's open up the JS folder so we can see that there. And then I will drag and drop this onto the web contents, and it's going to say, do you want to overwrite all of that? I'm going to say no. And then you can see Java jQuery 1.9.1 has just been added there. That's as simple as that. That's it. It's now, I can now reference it within my application through the JS jQuery 1.9.1 folder path. So just to take a look whilst we're here at the Color Picker plugin that we will look at later, this has all of these JavaScript files, all of these images, and this CSS. And I think it's very quickly apparent that that would become extremely difficult and tedious to manage within your Domino application. If all of these were attached as images, these were attached as style sheets, these were attached as JavaScript libraries, it would be very difficult. In this particular case, you go to the plugin website, you download the zip file with everything in the zip file, and you drag and you drop it into the application, and it's done. That's it. That's all you have to do. Makes life so much easier. So within your application, let me just jump back to PowerPoint. Talked about that. Yep, talked about that. You can now add it within the source panel within your particular X page directly, using the same kind of script as you would reference it as if it was a web page. You could also add it as a resource if you so choose. But if jQuery is going to be used throughout your application, it probably doesn't make sense to add it individually to each X page. So what you should do is you should actually add it as a theme item to your application. So if I jump back to the virtual machine, and if I go look at the themes, you will see in here I have my jQuery, and I have different versions through my different applications added as a resource through the theme. And that means that all of my X pages will have jQuery made available to it for my entire application. So I add it in here once, and then I can forget about it. So let me give you an example of what you can do with jQuery. Very simply, in about 10 lines of code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this notes view into an X page, which for those of you that have started to look into X pages is very simple. You create a view data source and you add a view panel to your X page, And you can do that in a couple of minutes, and it will create a nicer looking table than you would otherwise have got in old Domino for a view, but it looks a little like this. And so you can see the immediate problem in a notes view. Everything is concatenated on one line, whereas once you put it on the web, it shows the entire contents of the field, which makes this particular view considerably harder to look down and review than this would be if you were in the Notes client. So people look for the information they're looking for by scrolling straight down the screen, and then they would go into the document. This is easy to review to find the information you're looking at. This is not. So what I did, and this was actually on one of my blog posts, and is actually on a Notes in 9 video. A quick plug-in for my mate David Leedy. If you've never seen www.notesin9.com, you should go take a look. There is over 17 hours of demonstrations on XPages. Everything from beginners XPages through to some of the stuff I've done, some Java demonstrations, and basically the entire gamut of everything you could possibly want. And I actually go and in-depth explain how I managed to do this. But what I did using a few lines of jQuery was I turned the page into this. Well, this is immediately more readable because we have more information on the screen. When the user scrolls down and they find what they want, if they mouse over one of these sections, it scrolls everything into view in that particular section and blurs everything out so it can highlight what you're looking at. So you can very quickly scan down through here, find what you're looking for, go, is that what I want? No. Is that what I want? No. It gets more of this information onto the screen. And in this case, this particular section is so short that it doesn't need to be expanded. And briefly look at this is all the code that does that. That's it. So that's 21 lines, give or take a blank space or two. And as you can see in here, without going into exactly how it works, you'll see that I have these items chained together. So to read through them, what I did was in the view panel, I got every row that isn't the top row, because the top row has got titles on it. We don't want to scroll with that one. So get every row that's not the top row, but not this one, and fade them out. After you've done that, use animation to scroll the height of this row up. And then when the mouse comes out, you basically do the same thing again, but instead of filtering them out, we filter them, we fade them back in, and we take this row that we're on and we scroll it back to the same height. And all of these are chained together. So as you talk through how would I do this, what do I want to do, it becomes apparent how you would do it. Well, let me tell you this. How you really do it is you go to Google and you go expanding table rows jQuery, and you will find 10 examples on Stack Overflow of how to do that. One of the beauties of jQuery, and the fact that everybody uses it, is that almost certainly if you want to do something with it, somebody else has already done it or already failed to do it and asked a question on Stack Overflow. It is by far and away the quickest way to learn jQuery is to see what other people have done, see how they do it. Because, you know, I read through this, go, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And I then go look up the not method or the closest or whatever it is. And you learn, and very quickly. I did this in less than 2 hours. And I can't even begin to imagine how hard that would be to write from scratch. I'm not even sure that I could do it, but I'm absolutely positive it would take me a lot more than 2 hours, and I wouldn't make any promises to anybody that I could do it. And yes, so that's what we talked about. So what are jQuery plugins? Well, they are an extension of the code base. And as I mentioned before, they're chainable. And that's the beauty of this. So in the same way that we had, I keep doing that, the selector for my class.css display none, in this case, we have do something, and that do something would be your plugin. And when we go to look at some of the examples, I'll show you some of the sample code that is really very simple. And you go and look at the examples on the plugin's website, and you copy and paste it into your XPage, and you show your manager, and he says, "My God, you're awesome." And you, yes, of course I am. When in fact, all you've done is you've copied the examples. It makes life very simple. So, as mentioned before, they come with other files. And if you go to my demo website, demo.zomino.com, you can actually download a database that contains all of the examples and demonstrations that are on the site so that you can weed through this for yourself and start to understand how some of these things happen and also start to use them in your own applications. So here's an example. This is where we get into real-world requirements and how can jQuery help you meet your requirements. I had this requirement years ago, like 10 plus years ago. We released a whole new look and feel for the intranet, and the CIO wanted to be able to show people all of the new cool features on the intranet. But he wanted them to show up on the front page, and once the user had clicked through and gone, "Oh, okay, that's where it's moved to," and "Oh, that's cool," he didn't want it to be seen again. And ultimately, I couldn't do it. And we ended up doing a PowerPoint that got distributed to show people how to do it. So in this particular case, this is one of at least 3 plugins like this that I'm aware of. Here's my website, and this is my Joyride. And when I click Next, it takes me around the screen. And within each of these particular areas, it tells me about that part of the website. And when it's done, it's done. Now, all I have to do as the developer for this is tell it where to point, one div at a time, and what text do I want in the pop-up, and it takes care of everything else. And what it also does is this guy has clearly done this before, and he's provided us an awful lot of configuration parameters that we could use if we want to. So does the tip come, does the pop-up come below or above? How quickly does it move from one to the next? Is there a next button? And here's a cookie. So what this does is, if you so choose, you can let the user see this the first time. It then stores a cookie on their computer, and then they won't see it again next time when they come here. There's even a callback option so that when they get to the final close, you could put something on the screen that says, for more information, please call the help desk, or whatever it is. But all of this comes out of the box, and you get to use it for free. And I didn't mention this before, for free. Most jQuery plugins are free, and that's part of the best bit about them. There's another Notes in 9 episode that I did, actually showing you with the Trunk 8 plugin and how from scratch I downloaded it from the website, I added it to my demo database, and how I added it to a view panel to achieve the functionality that I was looking for. Basically, it's about a 15-minute video of me adding it to my database and demonstrating that these things really do take 15 minutes, which is just fantastic, Oh, how can they solve my requirements? Here's all that. So here's another good one. So stepping back a second, your customers' expectations are based on what they see on the internet today. And what they see on the internet today, as we've already seen, is mostly jQuery. So when your customer says, you know what, I think we should have a slideshow on the front page of our website, he's telling you that because he's seen a slideshow on somebody else's website. He's not the most creative person in the world, but he knows what he likes, and if somebody else can do it, then why can't you? So, you know, he's going to come into your office and say, I need a slideshow on the website. We have the images. I want it to pop up in the middle of the screen. The user can scroll through them. You go, sure, boss. And then he walks out the door. And after you've stopped panicking, you remember Google is your friend. And you basically Google slideshow, jQuery, and then you might find this particular website. And there are many websites like it that do conglomerations of plugins, and they do reviews of the features and the capabilities. And you can scroll down through here, and it tells you everything about it. Yeah, it's really pretty cool. And you go, you know what? I like that one. So you pull up the website, and you look at this and go, oh yeah, that's pretty sweet. That's pretty sweet. And oh yeah, look, there's the thumbnails. Yeah, I think that pretty much does everything he needs to. And then you download it and you add it to your database based on the examples. So here's the documentation from the website. How do you get started? How do you use the themes? Many of the plugin websites explain to you how to use their particular plugin. And it's very easy and quick to learn. If you don't like this one, you can go and find another one very quickly. And we'll see some of the other ones that we can do in a minute, including Galleria. It took me 3 or 4 hours to get Galleria to work, but it took 3 or 4 hours. I can't imagine how long it would take me to program this individually. There are thousands of lines of code that have gone into this. And I got it in my XPage in about half a day. And that's why you use jQuery. Yeah, that's it. That's why you do it. There are over 3,000 registered jQuery plugins. And they do everything from charts to responsive layouts. Many of you have probably heard of Twitter Bootstrap. Twitter Bootstrap is CSS in itself, in the fact that it's responsive. That's not jQuery, but the widgets that come with Twitter Bootstrap are jQuery. We can do sliders. We've seen galleries, date pickers, modal windows, tables, forms, animation, almost everything you can think of, and probably 50 different things that you've never thought you would possibly need. The first thing to do is go to Google and do a search. jQuery, do something plugin. If you go to demo.zomino.com, currently I have 19 different plugins demonstrated. And for the most part, what I've tried to do is to find examples that would really fit into situations where I've had requirements in the past. So, you know, I haven't got 15 different slideshow plugins, because all I need to do is to demonstrate that you can do one in XPages. And if you don't like that one, then you can go and find one for yourself. So let's take a look at some examples. So we looked already at the Joyride plugin. This is a token input autocomplete, which is not the best name. I have to say it's not the greatest name. But so in XPages, we now have a type ahead. You go to add a field, and you can, with one checkbox, you can make it a type ahead. You can give it a DB column, and you are able to do this. Excuse the styling. very quickly and very easily in a fantastic way that we could never do before in old Domino. Huge leap forward, except potentially when you want to add 2 people. Because as you can see, these start to get separated by a comma, and suddenly this was cool and it kind of isn't anymore. It's very good functionally, but it's not the greatest user experience. So immediately something that looks like this searches every letter in the word, whereas the type ahead only matches the first word unless you program a more complicated one for yourself. But once you've got one, it then allows you to pick more. And one of the really nice things about this plugin is that it may display this value, but on the back end you could be storing the user ID, so that when this form gets submitted, you can display this to the users, but you're actually saving 1, 2, 3, and 8, 9, 10. With this type ahead, that's not going to happen. You submit these values, you then have to do the look ahead on the back end again. In this particular plugin, it comes with a Facebook styling. So you can pick these people, and then you can immediately provide somebody the ability to make it look familiar. Everybody uses Facebook. This is 1,000,000 times better than that. And that's the code I used. So this is input text 3, and I used the token input plugin. I told it to use this REST service to pull back JSON data, search the email value of the user. I mean, I could have used the first name, the last name. I just chose to use email and use the Facebook theme. That's it. That is 3, 4 lines of code, and obviously building a REST service and everything else, but I now have that. And I did have a really nice Twitter example until they deprecated version 1 last week, and now this doesn't work anymore. And just trust me, it was good. So moving on to the next example, a color picker. So I can't really think why you would need a color picker in a normal corporate application, but maybe you do. But kind of my point is to show you that this is possible on a web page. I mean, this is just amazing. I mean, you can imagine this in Photoshop, but just this cross-browser capability to be able to pick a color, and then as you can see as I'm moving around here, I'm storing the color here. Brilliant. And there's a few more lines of code, but not many, and only mostly giving you the power and the capability to decide what you want to do with it after you've picked it. Long press, this is a good one. So, especially for multinational corporations, we always have a problem with only being able to type in the language that we have. So if you want a non-standard character and you wanted to put it into your web page, you would go to Word, you would look up a different symbol character set, you would find the one you're looking for, you'd put it onto your Word document, you'd then cut and paste it and put it into your website. I have a good friend, he's from Turkey, Serdar, and he very rudely, in my opinion, and I do have his permission to do this, has some non-Cyrillic characters in his name. So in this particular plugin, which is 1 line of code, if I hold down the S key, it actually shows me all of the different S characters that are already loaded into my browser's character set. And I can pick that one. And if I do the same thing with the G, I can now correctly represent his name based on what was on my character set. And it goes beyond that. If I press A and I hold it down, more A's than you could possibly think about, or an E, or even some Greek characters. Here's a capital L. Another good one is the $sign. If I hold down the $sign, lots of different Very nice plugin. Mask money. This is something I know you've all done. I need a field. I need to not have non-numeric characters typed in here, and I want it to be displayed with a decimal point. Well, as soon as I click into this field, you're just going to have to trust me, I'm pushing letters. And as soon as I start pushing numbers, it starts typing them in. And it's one line of code. And if I delete them all back out again, it goes back to 0. In this particular case, I click in here and it shows the yen symbol because I told it to. Oh, it goes away again when I click out of it. Look at that. Tell it to show the symbol. Now, in this case, I've done thousands of a dot and decimals as a comma. Yes, I know it doesn't look right, but I'm just doing it to demonstrate that I can. But in this case, we also get thousands. And like I said, they're backwards. Yes, I know. But now the field's not blank when I click out of it. The value stays. And when you submit the form, it takes all of these extras out and you just get the number submitted. Very nice. Very nice indeed. Nice quick little bit of animation. We have a table. It's showing some data and we want to show a chart. Well, why not show a chart in a really nice, slick little way? That's the kind of thing that gets your customers to go, ooh, wow, very nice, very nice. And as I mentioned before, charting, this is high charts. This one is not actually free. I think it's an extremely good one, but there are plenty of other free ones. And, you know, I can basically pick and choose, and it draws a chart for me with very little code indeed. Here's Galleria. So this is the Galleria that I did. Doesn't look exactly the same, but this actually allows me to scroll up and down to see the whole picture. I can show a little bit of information on it that way. I chose to have the thumbnails at the bottom, and it goes through like that. I just wanted to do a couple more. This is a jQuery plugin. Here's a map of the world. You can zoom into the map of the world. You can mouse over each country, and I've programmed it to then take the country code, and I'm then looking up all of these values that you can see over here. This is a jQuery plugin. You can't do this by hand. It's not possible. Fantastic. Fantastic. jQuery shadow. One line of code. Select what the section and then shadow it. Select, create a shadow. Immediately pops out of the screen. UX Design 101, add depth to your design, and it will immediately draw the people in, and it will make them feel warm and fuzzy on the inside. And I'm sure those are not the technical terms, but that's one line of code. Pick the area, shadow. Very, very simple. Very simple. And there, like I say, there are lots of other demonstrations in here. I'll go on, I'll do one more. Nano scroller. Let's agree that there is nothing more ugly than having a scroll bar in the middle of the screen. But for those of you that use Facebook, you will have seen this little scroll bar in the top right-hand feed before. So instead of having an ugly, ugly, ugly scroll bar, we have a much more discreet, much more user-friendly that still works with the mouse. But you can also program it. So when you hit the bottom, so you know when we all read the agreement, in this way you can actually trigger it when they hit the bottom to, in this case, actually display a button to do something. Very nice little plugin. Again, pick the area, nano scroller, do it. That's it. And that is why you should use jQuery in your XPages applications. So I will hand back to Howard or Ben. Who wants it?
I'll take it.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Right, let's do some questions.
Okay, so just a reminder, hopefully you're seeing my screen.
Can do. Yes, we are.
Okay, just a reminder that you can ask questions in the Q&A panel. That will be at the top of your screen, the WebEx interface. If you don't see the Q&A button in the ribbon at the top, use the drop-down arrow, and you'll see a Q&A option. And then you'll get this window where you can ask your questions, and you should ask your questions of all panelists. And by the way, Marky, have you tried in 9, and I think it was also in 8.53, the new Domino REST APIs to generate your JSON?
Absolutely. In fact, there are two different, that you can use the extension library RESTs or actually use the Domino data services directly from the server. Yes, absolutely love it.
Just explain what that is that in IBM actually added REST services, and you can go generate in JSON format the contents of, well, there's a number of different levels of the API. You can use it to, for example, get all the databases on a server in JSON format, get their title and the information about each database. You can get a list of all the views in a database. You can get a list of all the contents of what's in a view in a database. There's actually ways to even create, do all your CRUD operations with documents using a REST API, create, read, update, and delete. So it's pretty powerful and something that you might want to check out, and especially in combination with a lot of these jQuery plugins, they're going to be looking for JSON type data. So you could very easily point it to a view and do, let's say, the graphing that you saw. Previously, before this, we might have to have written what was called an X agent, where you have an X page that you actually turn off the HTML rendering and you control the output, or written an agent in LotusScript or Java, a Domino agent. Now it's very, very simple to get JSON format of your Domino data. Okay, so let's see what we have in the way of questions. I know there was a really good question by Gregory, and Gregory wants to know, what's the best way to debug the jQuery part of the code in case something doesn't work as expected?
Okay, I can answer that in 10 seconds or in half an hour, actually. Lots of different ways. What I would suggest is that you use the development tools in your browser. Is it worth you giving control back to me just so
Absolutely,
I can do a quick
yeah.
demo?
There's actually no questions in the queue, so don't feel like you got it.
So then let's talk a little bit about best practices then as well, whilst we're doing this. 30 minutes is okay. All right, let me share my desktop. Hopefully it won't take 30 minutes to come up again. Okay, can you see me now?
Yes, we do.
Okay, brilliant. All right, so this is where we left it. So I've been using Firefox as my demonstration, and within Firefox there is a plugin called Firebug, and you should all go get it, and you should all go get it now. Firebug allows you to manipulate the web page in real time and fix your code before you actually write it back into the X page. So the first thing I would tell you is, if you're going to write client-side JavaScript in your X pages, minimize to the absolute minimum how much you put on your X page or custom control. At best, call the function. And the reason I say that is because every time you have to make a change to your X page, you have to do a rebuild. And there are all sorts of interesting things that can go around with that we won't get into today. But if you want to execute some client-side JavaScript, call the function from your X page, and then put everything else in a client-side library. And then what you can do is you can take that, what's in the client-side library, and you can then actually copy and paste it into Firebug, and through the console, you can actually start to run your code against the web page, and you can see for yourself why it's not working. So let's take this as an example. So immediately you can right-click on an element and you can inspect it with Firebug. So this particular, there's a table cell. Within the table cell there's a span. There's a table cell, you know. So you can immediately look at the HTML. And I know I'm digressing a little bit, but you can actually start to manipulate the style over here. Because often that's kind of what we're doing many times, is we're trying to change the style. What is the color? What is going on? Why doesn't this look right, for example? We can start typing in here. We can actually go, and I've immediately made all of that red. So we know that if we set a CSS of red to the XP text view column, then that's what we get, for better for worse. So if I actually copy that, and I'm just going to reload the page again, what I can do in the console is I can actually start typing jQuery. So if I do let's do table, and I run that. This is the selector for everything that is a table. And over here we've got one table there, and we've got an outer table and we've got an inner table. And if I click on it, it actually gives me the HTML, and I can actually go take a look at that particular table. Cool. So what we had before was a selector for, we had the CSS for XP text view column. And I realize I'm a little all over the place, so I apologize. But just going back to this, this is what we all recognize as standard CSS. And for the most part, the selectors in jQuery are exactly the same as if you were writing it as if it was CSS. So if you have well, there won't be anything here that does an individual item, but for example, the body, that's the CSS that happens to have been overwritten by something else. But you know, this is select the body, do that color to it. And we're kind of doing the same thing in jQuery. So if we're going to take this column and we're going to do CSS display, and that's your code, and it's not working in your X page. And you can now start to play with this over here, and display is not defined. Oh, because that's not the right syntax. So you can actually go over here, and you can try it again, and it's all gone. And you can actually see over here, these are all of the different elements, spans, that actually matched that particular selector. Let's put them back again. Oops, daisy. Nice. So to answer your question and the 15 other questions that you didn't ask, that is the starting point of how I would debug my jQuery. Is I would actually, this is how I do it. I use Firefox, I use the console, and if I have some jQuery that's not working, I figure out how it works, and then I put it back in my X page. And in fact, even a step back from that, I probably wouldn't write it in my X page in the first place. So for any of these plugins that I've done, what I did was I added the script to the web content folder, the plugin, and I made sure that it was running on the X page, but then I didn't actually write any jQuery code in the X page. I will come straight to the console, and I will start to write my jQuery in here to get it to work on the web page, because all I have to do is do a refresh. I don't have to go to my X page to save, to build, to go back to my web page and refresh and don't have to do any of that. I figure it out in the console before I even put it in my X page in the first place. And hopefully that answers your question.
So Mark, do you find that there's also developer tools in Opera and I think IE10. Have you used any of those, and do you find them equal, or?
Well, actually, there are developer tools in Chrome, and I was actually blogging about that the other day. Actually, oops. I'll give you a quick demo. Sorry, all over the place. No, not that. So actually in Chrome, it actually goes one step further and actually allows you to edit your code in real time, actually. Now I've got to come up with a good example of one of these that does something. Because see, part of the problem is once your JavaScript is executed on the page, you can't go back and change it. But I don't think any of these are a good example. Well, just trust me, I guess. You can actually look up the source of each of your different plugins and everything that you do, and you can actually edit them so that if they're in a library, you can actually go in here and make changes to what's in the library. You're not really changing your X page, you're changing what's just cached in the browser. But you can manipulate it in here and just keep changing it until you hit that button and the function runs properly. Go take a look at my blog. I think it was just the end of last week, may even have been this week, that I actually wrote about that. That is extremely productive way of debugging your JavaScript. Each one, now at least IE10, but Chrome and Firefox also have JavaScript debuggers built into them. So you can just type debugger into your code and it will automatically come up as your code is executing. You can track variables, and you can make any particular changes that you want to in real time with these debugging tools within the browser. What I will say is I think Internet Explorer has, before IE9 not so much, but the IE9 developer tools are very good. But they're not as intuitive and easy to use as Firefox and Chrome. And I know some of you are thinking, yes, but all of my customers only use Internet Explorer. So I need to use Internet Explorer to do all of my debugging. And I would say to you, yes, but this is jQuery. And these people have written these plugins to work in multiple browsers. So you can still work on it and debug it and get it to work in Firefox, and you go back over and you test it in Internet Explorer and it will work.
So a follow-on question. This is actually from me. I noticed that do you ever, now the files that you downloaded from jQuery are the minimized JavaScript files, the minimized.
Yes.
Right, you can't read the code. do you often debug and develop using the non-minimized version? And
That's a good point. That is a good point. So almost all of these jQuery libraries are published under generally the MIT license, sometimes the Apache, but generally MIT. And what that means is you can use it for free and you can change it for free. And there's a big long list of legal stuff usually at the top of the file that basically says just make sure that you credit me, the creator, with this. So you can make changes yourself. As Howard alluded to, there are usually two different versions. There's a debug version, and then there's what's called a minified version. And the minified version basically reduces all of the function names from, Marky's open function down to function A, function B, function C, and removes all extra spaces and reduces variable names. And what it does is it makes for a smaller download. It's also completely unreadable. So if you want to see how the plugin works, you can go into the debug code and take a look at it. But I would generally recommend against that unless you really know what you're doing. And I would say, yes, Howard, I have actually done that. In fact, the token autocomplete plugin, I actually found a bug in it when I started playing with it. It doesn't, or at the time, it didn't like ampersands. And I managed to hunt through the debug code, and then I reported the issue out on the GitHub repository for the library. So if you want to get into them that far, generally the people writing these plugins are very keen and eager, obviously, to make their particular plugin better. And you can. And, that's part of the whole beauty of this, is you can get in there and really get your hands dirty with it.
okay, thanks. I don't know if we have any other questions. Let me switch over screen back to me, or actually you have to do
hang
that.
on, I have to send it back to you.
Yeah, if anyone has any other questions, we're at about a few minutes left. Go ahead and post your question. But I'll go ahead and until we see any questions come in, just point out, hopefully you're seeing my screen.
Yeah, we can.
Just some upcoming events. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but we at TLCC are having a sale on a lot of our popular XPages and other Notes and Domino developer and admin courses. So you'll see that at our homepage. Also, there are some events coming up that may not necessarily apply depending on where you are geographically, but there is in the U.S., I don't have it on the chart, but MWLUG is going to be in Indianapolis in August. And then in England, there's Icon UK, which will be in the very beginning of September. And at both of those events, TLCC is doing a day of XPages training, either the day after in the case of the Icon UK, or the day before in the case of MWLUG. So that's at our homepage if you're interested. Also, Team Studio is having specials on their tools as well as the Ytria tools. And a reminder that the next webinar is next week. It will be in the morning East Coast time. So it'll be kind of a 12-hour difference from when we're having this one. And that there's also the SoftBank World event in Japan that Team Studio will be at. So let's see, do a final check. I don't think we have any questions. Let me try
what I would say is if anybody wants to contact me directly, please feel free to. Well, if you don't want to ask a question in the session, please feel free to contact me afterwards. As Ben said, we will be publishing this whole presentation after this has been finished. My contact information you've seen on the screen at Marky Roden or marky.roden on Skype. Please feel free to get in touch with me.
Right, and that does bring up a good point, Marky, that The slides will be published along with we're hopefully recording the complete webinar, so that will be published as well. And we'll send out an email, hopefully by the end of the week, that has the links to both the recording and the slides for everybody. So I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I don't know if Kyle or Ben, do you have anything you would like to add?
Nope, that's good.
Nope, just want to thank everybody for joining us today, and Mark, great job.
Yes, thank you so much, Marky, for staying up late, depending on if you're a night owl or not, and doing this webinar, doing the repeat of the webinar, because you've already done it once for Team Studio and TLCC. So a big thank you for that. And luckily, this wasn't a basketball night, so you ended up picking the right night. Otherwise, you guys would be hearing the TV in the background.
Right.
So, thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your day or evening. And hopefully we'll catch a lot of you next Thursday at our next webinar.